Hello and welcome to Tuesday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. Today, we've got a blast from the past. Details on a canceled VR headset from Valve have emerged, and it's pretty wild to say the least. But there's more from Valve this past week. I know I've been hearing many people throw around the term Valve Index 2, but it turns out Valve has actually been working on a top secret headset for the past 2 years. Semi-transparent augmented reality displays have popped up from Apple, and Oculus has a few big updates for the Quest. That and so much more, but first, a word from this video's sponsor, Ridge Wallet. Comes in over 30 colors, holds up to 12 cards, and cash, plus it comes with a lifetime warranty. Metal body construction, and a built-in RFID blocker to stop digital pickpocketers from stealing your precious VR money. Plus, if you use code THRILL at checkout, you'll get a slick 10% off your entire order. Go ahead and check them out from the links below. But now, it's time to get right into the news. HP's new headset, that HP Reverb G2, has become available for pre-order throughout Europe and Canada after being available in the US for the past month or so. And we may have an estimated date that the headsets will begin shipping. The price is going to be around $600 plus shipping, of course, and the G2 is looking to be a pretty great headset for the price. Working in conjunction with Valve, HP has adopted a similar headstrap style and off-ear speaker design from the Index, two things that definitely have brought the Index a step above the competition. Not to mention, the Reverb G2 has a higher resolution than all competing headsets in its price range. The G2 is something I'm definitely interested in. In my opinion, it's kind of the Oculus Rift S that Oculus should have made, but instead we're getting it from HP. Depending on who you are, I understand that base stations and having to set up stationary things in a play space just to have tracking is something that not everyone wants to do, which is something you don't have to do on the Reverb G2, using 4 cameras to perform inside-out tracking similar to what we see on the Quest, Rift S, and previous Reverb. So it's pretty much a cheaper Index without base stations, but of course you lose out on some of the Index's best features, like having base stations itself, the knuckles, and the high refresh rate is a trade-off for the price and convenience of having inside-out tracking. It appears that September 15th is the projected shipping date for the headset, as it appears in the trailers, but HP has said this is merely an estimate. Of course, the headset seems to be almost too good to be true, which is why I'm just stating the specs and not willing to go as far as to say that the headset is good until I get it in my hands and I review it myself. I'm personally skeptical of HP as is, and the last Reverb did have massive launch issues just last year. But if you are interested, now is your chance to pre-order almost worldwide. But now onto Valve and this canceled VR headset. So let me clarify, this isn't exactly new news, but it's new to me, which means it might just be news to you. Plus, some pretty big details popped up recently in the Half-Life Alyx Final Hours documentary that's now on Steam. We all know the original story of how the VR market came to be what it is today. To put it simply, a small startup called Oculus was working with Valve on cutting-edge VR devices. That is, until Oculus was bought by Facebook, and Valve and Oculus went in their own separate directions as competitors in the VR industry. Well, soon after the Oculus acquisition, Valve's hardware department started working with HTC to create the HTC Vive that we all know today. Well, the headset shipped under HTC's banner with Valve software support, even though Valve was really the company behind the technology. But at the end of the day, the Vive was a compromise for Valve. All the while, that same VR hardware team was working on a prototype nicknamed the Vader. No longer held back by specifically making a profit on hardware and more focused on absolute cutting-edge technology, Valve says themselves that they went pretty overboard with the design and technology. Literally not having to answer to anyone, the project went crazy. It's been stated that the head engineers at Valve were annoyed by the terms marketable and productized, and they just wanted to make something amazing and first-party, saying, quote, "We weren't going to be held back by third-party and business realities, so we went a little crazy with our design for the Vader. HTC helped us figure out what could be productized, but without that tension, we sort of maxed out on everything on Vader." End quote. and the end product, if it could ever be mass-produced, likely would have cost more than $5,000, featuring dual vertical displays from what looks like a Samsung Galaxy S4 and far more tracking points than most headsets on the market have today. As you can see, the Vader would have been an absolute beast, but that headset did end up getting completely cancelled, and instead, work was started on a Project Frank. This headset used updated base station technology, had full finger track presence, and was a mix-up of productizing a VR headset with the cutting-edge technology together. June of 2019, Project Frank was released as the Valve Index. It's really interesting looking back at Valve's previous work in the VR industry, as they really have been absolutely monumental in this current wave of consumer VR. And it's crazy to think of how things might have been different if something like the Vader was released instead of the Index. Here's a short clip of it actually being used. But enough of looking into the past. What's in it for the future of Valve and VR besides just their VR software? The same Final Hours documentary that revealed some of Valve's past also hints at what their future looks like and what Valve is working on right now. Valve's Jeremy Salin has already said, quote, "The Index is 2 years old technology," end quote. And that's when the Index launched. Gabe Newell has also remarked multiple things on the future of VR, both far and near, stating things like the Matrix is closer than we think, and that Neuralink similar technology is certainly where virtual reality is headed. But everything moving forward is just speculation, except for the fact that Valve has said they have a top secret VR headset prototype in the works since 2018. And that's not the Index or Project Frank, that's something completely new. According to Upload VR, Valve's own Greg Coomer has suggested that the ending of Half-Life Alyx has significant meaning and impact regarding Valve's next VR hardware. Of course, no spoilers here, but if you know, you know. Of course, we don't know any specific details regarding Valve's next headset or game, but big things are coming and I couldn't be more excited to be part of it. And you best bet, if anything does surface, you'll be hearing about it here in Tuesday Newsday in the future. But now it's time for a meme break! Apparently, there's an Indonesian boy that was given the ever so unique name of Google by his parents. Well, someone over at the company Google must have heard about it because he's been receiving gift bags and presents from the company themselves. Pretty nice story, but on a totally unrelated note, I'd like everyone to meet my newly born twins, Valve Index and Star VR1. These are totally my legit children and in no way stock footage that I paid for. But regardless, here's their P.O. box. It would mean the world to me if you could hook them up with the gift bag full of headsets. Thank you. Much love. But now, back to the news. Some pretty gigantic things have come to the Oculus Quest this past couple weeks. 2, actually. First is the slightly older of news, but it means a lot for VR moving forward, and I think it was massively undercovered in terms of VR news. You may have heard of DLSS from NVIDIA. That stands for Deep Learning Super Sampling. Very basically, what this is doing is taking a lower resolution image and using machine learning and AI to upscale that image, taking the workload off of your GPU or processor and allowing you to get a better looking game with worse hardware. Or even better, allowing you to have a better looking game with a higher frame rate. The only problem here is that DLSS is proprietary technology that only works with NVIDIA RTX GPUs, so it really isn't something that could be established industry-wide. However, Oculus and Facebook have designed something even better that does the exact same thing, but like I said, better, dubbing it neural supersampling for real-time rendering. The thing is that while this technology is usable for any game engine or hardware, it is specifically noted to be useful for VR applications. To give you an example of how advanced this work has come, engineers at Facebook used an input image of 960 by 540 and had an output image of 3840 by 2160. And this was real-time in-game rendering with minimal spatial distortion like you often see with DLSS. This is specifically a big deal for VR because it's been made obvious that Oculus is focusing heavily on standalone VR, headsets made cheap that have their own hardware on board. Take the Quest, for example. It has a multiple-year-old Snapdragon 835, outclassed by even the least capable of VR-capable PCs. But in the future, where something like Facebook's AI supersampling is standard, it's very possible to use far cheaper hardware to achieve the same result. The researchers concluded with this statement, quote, "The work points towards a future for high-resolution VR that isn't just about the displays, but also the algorithms required to practically drive them." End quote. Mix AI supersampling with real foveated rendering, and VR could become easier to run than some flat games, making the best VR available to everyone, regardless of what hardware you're running. Because let's be real, the Oculus Quest is awesome, but if you want the best VR has to offer, it has to be on a PC. But that's really not what the future holds for VR. Cheaper hardware, cheaper rendering costs, and more VR on more people's heads. This specifically isn't anything that will affect your Quest right now though. This is a research paper and has no real field experience being in our game engines or running on games currently. So it all feels like a far off pipe dream, to be honest. But another update for Unreal Engine 4 has made developing for the Quest a whole lot faster. Previously, every single build for an Oculus Quest game could take 30 minutes or longer. Having the Oculus APK build new libraries every time a new iteration was to be made, which if you haven't ever worked in game design, iterations of game builds can sometimes take place multiple times a day. Well, a new, more streamlined fast build has been implemented, cutting down build times to be a fraction of the previous average. This example shows a previous 30-minute build only taking around 3.5 minutes. All in all, this is just making VR game development for the Quest far faster and more convenient, which I'm sure you can tell VR hardware moves fast. Software needs to move faster to keep up. Since we're talking about hardware, it's worth mentioning a report on Apple's newest hardware advances in terms of augmented and virtual reality devices. I know the mixed reception of Apple joining the hardware race, but it's my duty to cover it here because if they do join, they will be a big player in bringing VR and AR to more people that maybe would have never been interested before. A report from The Information says that Foxconn has moved to the trial production phase of a new semi-transparent display. It's been pretty obvious with Apple buying up companies left and right that specialize in all things VR and AR, from media companies to hardware companies, that Apple will be joining soon. Of course, this particularly is nothing more than a leak in a report, but it does come from a reputable source, and I can consider something pretty big to be on the radar from Apple soon. But now it's time for question of the week from Big Toe Boy. How does it feel to introduce your main hobby and passion to thousands of people? I gotta say, this has been a dream for me. I remember watching old school VR videos in 2016 and 2017. Those people and those creators essentially are the ones that got me into VR. Whether it's a list video showing off the best VR games of the time, or a gameplay video from someone like Jacksepticeye. Videos and YouTube got me into VR, and it blows my mind that I could do the same for thousands of others. I didn't expect it, but I can easily say it's changed my life for the absolute better. Make sure to leave your own question of the week below. I may just answer yours next. Also, stop by my Twitch stream today to continue this conversation. It's always a good time. And join up in the best VR-related Discord server on the planet to meet some like-minded individuals like yourself. I want to thank all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas like Benji, Fusion Oak, Jake, Crossalon, Zimp, Snowman VR, Studio Form VR, Tristan, VR Balance, and Very Evil Shadow. I couldn't be doing any of this without you. Don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.